You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
All right, partner. Keep on rolling, baby. Y'all know what's happening. Wait a minute. Fred Durst is not here in the shred shed right now. It's just me. I'm feeling a little bit goofy because, honestly, I'm very sleepy. And that's what happens when I'm recording intros while under the influence of lack of sleep. But here we are, everybody. We're here with a fresh episode for you. Today, I'm talking to Micheal Montoya, otherwise known as Morgoth. Man, this dude has a lot of experience, and he has some very unique perspectives that I'm very excited for you to get a peek at. But before we get into that, I just want to give a huge shout out to all of the premium content subscribers, whether that is on Patreon or on the newly introduced Apple subscription, which you can see if you are an Apple user. It's right there in your app. I say that because we had a ton of new people sign up last month on both platforms. And honestly, it doesn't seem like that much, but it really helps. It really does. When you put a bunch of little drops in the bucket, eventually the bucket starts filling up and it actually starts really moving the needle. So I want to encourage you to support your favorite creators. It doesn't matter whether they're musicians, podcasters, YouTubers, whatever. Any artist that you really enjoy or content creator that you really enjoy, if you can support them, I promise you it means a ton to them because every little bit goes a very long way. So if you could share this episode with somebody, share your favorite episode with somebody, that would honestly mean the world. And the fact that you're spending time with me, honestly, thank you so much. Really. I know you've already spent several minutes with me. Thank you. I appreciate that. And with respect to that time, let's jump right into this episode with Morgoth. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland. With me today, I have Micheal Montoya, otherwise known as Morgothbeatz. What's going on, dude?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
stoked to be here.
Yeah, should be fun. So a lot of my listeners, they generally are fairly familiar with a lot of my guests, but there's a good chance that your best known work my listeners aren't necessarily 100% hip to.
Very possibly.
Oh.
Sorry. My phone was just going crazy, people. Don't even worry about it.
All right. It's fine. It's natural. It happens every time. But yeah, I know you played in Winds of Plague. You've done a lot of that stuff, but you also, segued into the hip hop world, which I always find pretty fascinating from, a rock or metal guy going into that. It seems counterintuitive, but it happens more and more every day, it seems. So I don't know. Let's start at day one. When did you start getting into music and how did it lead you to where you are today?
Awesome. Yeah. So, my dad, plays guitar. My mom sings and stuff, and they had bands growing up. They were more like blues rock kind of bands. So, I just grew up, with guitars around and started playing when I was 11, 12, something like that. And I took piano classes before that. I was really into, I luckily, because my parents, I heard Sabbath when I was really young, and I heard all kinds of different music from my parents who had pretty eclectic taste in music. So, and I hung out with I grew up in for the beginning of my childhood, I grew up in Northern County, San Diego. So I grew up with a lot of older friends who are like skateboarders, you know, and that kind of culture is infused with like punk and metal and hardcore and, you know, hip hop too. So a lot of old skate videos and stuff I used to watch. You know, I got a lot of my music taste early as a kid from that, where I'd hear like, you know, Slayer and I'd hear the Ramones and Black Flag, but I'd also hear a lot of those old skate videos had like instrumentals of hip hop, which I never really heard before. I'd only heard because hearing like a beat without the vocals on it is just a different thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my taste for production, like hip hop production, came from. But yeah, all my early bands were like punk bands, like and metal and hardcore bands. And then, you know, obviously I play in my band now, Winds of Plague. Still do that. We're still a band. And yeah, so basically that's like the early gist of the early part was just, you know, playing in heavier bands with my friends. And then I started producing hip hop stuff because a few of my friends from after I lived in San Diego, I moved to this small town in northern New Mexico called Taos, which is where most of my family's from. Is from like northern New Mexico and like the native reservations up there. So a lot of my friends who were there were hip hop producers. So I would play guitar on some of their beats and stuff like that, and moved to LA. And then the early part of the 2010s, hip hop started kind of turning more towards like an alternative direction. So luckily, because I was around a lot of friends who were also into that kind of music, I was able just to, after making, you know, playing guitar and a handful of beats, I was just kind of like, oh, I could do this, because I had already been engineering and producing hardcore and like metalcore bands and stuff like that. And my band's symphonic, so, you know, we do a lot of keyboards and orchestration and stuff like that. So really the difference was just changing the drum sounds. And, you know, that's basically how I learned how to do it and kind of came up with my own sound for it. And luckily for me, you know, a lot of the artists I started working with early on, that ended up being the wave of what is like mainstream music now. So I was able just to kind of ride the wave with a lot of those early SoundCloud artists like Bones and Omen 13, you know, a lot of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, basically that's the gist was. So I was doing hip, and then, you know, when the hip hop stuff started going really well, like, you know, like Bones, for instance, is a huge artist, a very influential, huge artist who's like a metalcore kid, basically, who started making hip hop, similar to me, that I was just kind of like, oh, I should probably take this seriously, because, you know, these songs get like millions of views and stuff like that. And this metalcore band I'm producing gets like a couple 100,000 views, so maybe on a good day. So, yeah, it was just kind of one of those obvious things that I felt like, you know, just, I didn't necessarily grow up being like, oh, I want to be, you know, like Jay Dilla or like Dr. Dre or something like that. But, you know, sometimes you got to just be smart with the cards you're dealt and just totally, like, move where the wind takes you.
Mm-hmm. The winds of plague, where they take
exactly. funny guy.
Central over here. That's what it is. 24. You know, it's really. So, what did you see? Like Bones and the other artists that you started working with, did you see that coming? Were you like, I think this is the next thing, or did you just happen to be a part of it?
No, yeah. Honestly, I saw it coming, and at first it kind of felt like some wild Kuka Mania theory in my head, but really kind of what I think happened was there was like the early Raider Clan stuff from Florida, like Space Ghost Perp, and a lot of people came from that group who ended up being big artists like Denzel Curry and stuff like that. But a lot of those kids were like into rock, and at least they dressed like it. They were dressing. Hip hop got a lot darker. So if you think of, it seems obvious now, but then hip hop and alternative music were not like merged very much, other than some underground artists here and there, like Atmosphere and stuff like that, which I was really into that kind of stuff. But what happened, I think, was a lot of rappers and hip hop culture started dressing more like rock. And then naturally, if you look at like music history, what kind of follows that is music becomes more influenced from rock. So I was just starting to notice more and more like, oh, I can do these really dark keyboard melodies and stuff that I would normally do for my metal band or like hardcore bands I'd produce, and just add different drums over it. It was really that simple to where it was just kind of like an obvious thing where I was like, oh, it seems like these kids want something more influenced from rock, because they seem to be more influenced from stuff like Nirvana and like Blink-182 and stuff like that than they are from, say, like 50 Cent or Tupac or something like that. The influence was obviously changing in the generation. So in my head, I was like, it naturally makes sense that it's just going to snowball more and more and more and now, it's 2021 and a lot of rappers are even totally crossing over into making like alternative rock music. So
100%.
Luckily I had a theory and it turned out to be at least partly true.
Yeah, 100%. You're seeing people that, so I also had, I don't know if you saw, I had Nedarb on the show too.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, dude, so cool. And you're, kind of the second guy in that category that I'm talking to in my mind, because I'm not a part of the hip hop scene at all. Well, I guess I played on one record, like recent, like semi, but it was a new thing, it was a new exploration for me. But when I did that, I experienced the same things that I'm like, oh, this isn't structurally all that different. It really is.
Yeah. It's just the sound choices that you make, like the way the drum sounds, how much you really care about them sounding real or not. Like those are kind of the things that make a genre. There's a lot of music. Like I write 808 lines the exact same way I write breakdowns. It's literally the same mentality, like rhythmically. It's just like the sound that's being used. It's different.
What's so crazy, and I really, this is a big thing, that a reoccurring theme on this show, because I got stuck in this rut for a long time of just, I love gear. I'm a gear nerd. I love pedals and stuff. But I had all this stuff and I was just kind of noodling by myself. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then I started just recording myself noodling by myself and actually doing something with it, and it's something that I've wanted to push the audience that listens to this show, because I know they're all gear nerds too. That's primarily how they got here in the first place, is because they heard about Josh from JHS Pedals coming on the show and they want to hear about pedals, which I totally understand. But I want people to really focus on doing things with the pedals beyond, there's nothing wrong with just playing for your own enjoyment. That's what most of us spend most of our time doing. But, throw a mic up, and just see what happens. You never know where it could lead.
Yeah, totally. I definitely think there's a difference, even especially from touring a lot. I've noticed there's definitely a difference between some people just want to play music and just like kind of be in a band, or just like they enjoy playing it and just messing with the gear and stuff like that, but they're not really as interested in creating music, versus some people, are more interested in the creating music part, like, which it is a little bit, there's a difference between those kind of players versus like creators, and you're especially on tour, you'll be around it a lot, because most bands don't, it's usually not 100% a like collaborative effort. A lot of times it's one or two people kind of like manning the ship and just like handling the creative process, and the other dudes just play what they make.
Yeah.
Obviously not, that's not the case all the time, but that's a case majority of the time.
Have you found like there to be there, as much as the two, don't want to say two genres, because like metal and hardcore are different, but the alternative scene and the hip hop scene is blending together, but is there any clash? Is there any,
most of the clash is coming from the metal side. Like rappers and stuff really look up to and respect like rock a lot. Like you would be amazed at how many times I've been around like predominant like artists who, as soon as I tell them I play in like a decent sized metalcore band or something like that, all of a sudden their interest in wanting to hear my music or wanting to hear like production collabs I could do with them goes up. And it's been happening like that for a while. Like their respect for rock is really high, even if they're not the most. Some are really knowledgeable about it. Like, the biggest thing I've done is I produced for JuiceWrld, and he knew a lot. He knew a lot. Like he was a scene kid, 100%. Then there's some I met, where they have like a surface level of it, but their respect for it is really high.
Mhm.
And I've noticed a lot on the rock side. I think this just happens every generation. It's because they're different, and it's because they're coming from a different style of music, where I think older people remember the difference between, the early 2000s and rap being a little more like bling and like braggadocious, and the style of dressing was different. I think they still think it's like that, but it's not really like that anymore. Now it's very much like the weird kids run the show, and I just don't think they're all the way. So when they hear something like Lil Uzi Vert or something like that, they can't hear the nuance, like in that his vocal influence is like heavily from like Paramore or something like that. They're not hearing, it's going over their heads, or they just don't like the music. Maybe, I don't know, but I think a lot of it is it's going over their heads. They're just incapable of separating the cultures from each other when it's really similar. Like I think because we should embrace the fact that the most popular style of music now thinks that the rock kids are cool. Like you don't really have to go through being bullied and stuff like that for liking bands and wearing like dressing like eccentric. Now that's like those are the cool kids, and to me that's a great thing. That's what I always wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to fight anymore for looking weird, which when I was in high school, I had to fight to have like spiky hair and stuff like that, something. But yeah,
it is weird how that both in culture and in like technology, the weird nerdy kid of whatever variety that might be seems to end up coming out on top a lot of times, whether that's creatively or like they start a tech company or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not usually, this isn't 100% true every time, but it's not always like the popular jock that like you look at 20 years later and you're like, man, I wish I was doing what that guy did. It's usually like the weird kid.
Yeah, honestly, because like there's like depth in like nerd culture, that in a lot of ways. There's a lot of toxic stuff about it too. There's a lot of like unhealthy tendencies. Like we're talking about like the weird kids who are like creative, and put stuff out in the world. It's a little different than like maybe the nerdy kid who just judges everything and doesn't actually produce anything himself.
Right. Just gatekeeping the whole time.
Yeah. Gatekeeping something that where the people who he's trying to gatekeep for have a completely different opinion and disagree with him about how insular that thing should be. Like I always laugh when I see like kids who are really gatekeepy with metal or something like that. And I've toured with like the bands, and I know the dudes who like they look up to, and I'm like, dude, your hero does not agree with you and would like tell you to chill. Right. You're not defending them. You're totally misrepresenting like what their opinion is.
And furthermore, like the gatekeeping stuff is really weird. And I say this as somebody who did this as a teenager. So like,
yeah, honestly, I was really into punk and stuff. So I had a little bit more of a snotty opinion when I was a teenager too. It's natural.
Yeah. And it's the most ridiculous thing, because at the end of the day, pretty much every single artist, no matter who you're talking about, wants more people to hear what they're doing. Like they don't want their fans to not tell other people about it. That's the
absolutely
of what anybody wants ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Weird attitude. I mean, does that come from that whole punk rock mentality? I mean, that's where I came from too. Is it that whole like you don't want to get too big and sell out? Or I don't know where that comes from. It's so strange.
I think it's just a misunderstanding and misrepresentation that a group of fans had versus what the reality of the music actually is. Like it's not actually gatekeeping music, and no one who was involved in it really intended it to be who was actually creating the music. Yeah. Maybe there's like a couple older dudes like in the scene who just get older and don't understand youth culture anymore. There is that, but for the most part, it's more about being open-minded and stuff. That was kind of what drew me like initially to being stoked about working on like, that earlier wave of SoundCloud stuff. Was I was like, this feels very similar to me like when I was starting like punk bands in my garage, like with my friends, because these kids are like, they don't have any money, they look crazy, they're like full attached, and they have a little home studio, and they're kind of just breaking all the rules and conventions on like, okay, you have to go to a big studio, you have to use all this gear, you have to spend X amount of money, you got to go to a pro mixer, which is what I thought too, because I was like, working in like metal and hardcore, like producing those kind of bands. And I went to like recording school and stuff like that. And I was like, when I started working on this alternative hip hop stuff and just saw they were like, oh no, it's cool. Like, you make the track, that's the mix, the final balance is the end of your production beat. You track vocals over that and, do a little vocal mix, and, you can record it. They'll record it like just on some regular SM7 or something like that. Sometimes even like an SM57 or something. And they'll be like, oh yeah, you just get it to sound good enough. They're like, oh yeah, that's cool. We're putting that out like right now. Yeah. And it costs them no money to make. Then they're like, all right, let's shoot the video, call over dude, he'll do it for $400. Dude shoots the video, edits the video. Like it's just them in their grimy, like scenario place they're at or wherever with their friends and stuff. They make the video, comes out, gets millions of views. The whole thing cost them like $600 to make. And they netted like, freaking $30,000-$50,000 off it. When, right. When metalcore bands, I was like, dude, we spent like 20 grand on this video that like looks cool. And we spent like another 20 on this like recording and mix, which sounds good. I was like, but it's not hitting people the same way that this stuff is. I was like, clearly, like, I was like, I'm missing something here. And then, it just kind of showed me that it's like, oh, it's not the gear. It's not. Sometimes you got to just, whatever is the best you can do, that's good enough, for the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, talking to NetArb he repeated almost that exact same thing. I was asking him what he uses, and he was like, man, on all of the stuff that he's most known for, like all the little peep stuff, he's like, ran down, he's like, free plugins,
Mm-hmm.
like everything was done with as budget as you could possibly do it, essentially, at least in the early stages. And then even that If I Die First record, I was asking him, because like, I think it sounds awesome. And he's like,
yeah, it definitely does.
He's like, oh yeah, that's all in the box plugins and stuff and programmed beats. And I'm like, what? And then that honestly helped me kick. Like, I'm like, all right, I got to do something. I have all this stuff. I have no excuse anymore. Make some weird stuff, do some weird things. And, I made my record, and I'm really happy that I did. But hearing that exact thing where you're like, these kids are just doing it, they're just doing it. We should just do, like really.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone can learn to record themselves at least well enough. Like I usually tell people like, look, if you can learn to track yourself, at least like just get a clean signal. You don't have to like go to create. You can just take it to someone who can mix it a little better and, who can do a better job at that. But if you can at least get clean DIs, and like learn how to draw and submit like MIDI mapping, that's really that you can learn that in a couple hours on TikTok and YouTube, like pretty efficiently. So the entry level bar is so low that just about anyone can do it. It's just kind of a working harder or smarter, not harder kind of thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there is definitely like, you got to hone the craft, right? You got to try things and experiment and learn and, get better at songwriting. But literally anyone can make sound.
Yeah.
So,
and I know too. I know I'm speaking from a position where like before I was doing, working on this hip hop stuff, I was doing like band stuff where I did have to, mic full drum kits, and I interned and was a runner at like some bigger studios like NRG and stuff like that. So I've seen it and been very hands-on with it the much more detailed way, which is if you're at that level and you can do that, that's great. I would never tell someone to like, no, just throw all that away, just do it this way. Like, like if you have the ability to do that and you know how to do that, that's great. That's what you should strive for. But you don't have to not release music because you're not there,
Totally.
That's just more what I'm saying.
No, you're 100% right, because I was totally in my head for the longest time. And the first record, that I worked on was done like full blown mic'd up, like in a good studio, and it was a lot of fun, and I want to do it again. But at the same time, when I go back and listen to all these things, like, is it like dramatically better than the stuff I did on my own? Like, not really. You know,
same thing. I literally went through the same thing too. My old band, right before I joined Winds of Plague, was called Goliath. We were like a heavy beatdown deathcore kind of band, and I recorded at Audio Hammer with A.L. Levy, who does Nail the Mix, with Joey Sturgis. And it was a great experience. We made a really cool sounding record. I got like Todd Jones from Nails on the record, and really we made a cool little EP. But like doing it and then like listening back to my demos and stuff too, it just made me realize I was like, okay, I'm already there. I'm like kind of there. I can take a lot of workload of this kind of stuff on to myself and not be so like self-conscious about worrying if it's like up to par, because like Ale is like a pro and the music came out great, but I was like, oh, I think I'm like in the ballpark of this. So I was much more confident about releasing stuff I had done.
Yeah, man, I just interviewed this guy yesterday. He's from this UK band called Glitchers. I don't know if you've seen them or not, but
haven't heard of them yet.
You might have seen. They tend to go viral occasionally on Instagram and TikTok because they play on the street. And so the 2-piece band and drummer and guitar, and he literally sets up on the street with a megaphone and like a cheap amp and just rocks, just it was insane. Stabs his guitar into the amplifier and, into the speaker. And people are just like, whoa. So they go viral occasionally. And he was really interesting to talk to because I was listening to their latest EP and going, wow, this sounds really good. Like, what are you using? He's like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm using GarageBand, and I'm just recording this Black Star amp I've got straight in, and I just mess with it till I think it sounds good. And I'm like, well, you nailed it.
Yeah.
Like the EP sounds really great. Like when you watch them live, it sounds good, but obviously he's like yelling through a megaphone and dancing around. So it's not the best recording, obviously, but it's not supposed to be. But so I was really not sure what I was going to get into when I listened to their actual produced stuff, and it's really good. Like, and when he told me that, I was like, just if it ain't broke, don't fix it, man. Like, don't stress. You're doing something right. Like, keep going.
Yeah, totally.
It's a cool thing. Definitely check them out. They're pretty dope.
Okay, cool.
Guy kind of sounds like Keith Buckley from Every Time I Die.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, vocally, it's pretty dope.
Tight.
But so if you had to go back in the day, because you've done a lot of different things, and give yourself some advice at this point, what would you say to a young Micheal?
Like if I were to go back to me in like middle school and high school and stuff, I probably would have told myself to, because I did classical guitar and like mariachi in high school guitar. So, I mean, that was good, but I probably would have told myself to join choir, join band, take all the music lessons I probably could, get as good as music as like I possibly could at a young age. Just, you never know though. I could have done that. And then like, I could have not taken the path like I took and not been as, successful or whatever. But, there's just times now where, in songwriting sessions and stuff like that, like I can sing a little bit. I'm okay at piano. My rhythmic sensibility is decent, but, I come across, players like I worked a lot on like the Last Issues album and stuff. And AJ from Issues was in drumline, and dude's timing is like inhuman. Like it's like it's human quantized. His right hand is like instant quantized, like, with insanely complex rhythms that are like hard. So stuff like that, where I come across those kind of like musicians more often, where I'm just like, Jesus, like it kind of humbles you a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good thing. It's good to work with people who are better than you. I feel like that's how you really grow, is working around people who are better than you at a certain thing, or, just involving your friend group more with like-minded individuals striving for similar goals will advance you further than probably most things. But yeah, my advice would just probably be just to not be. I was very focused. Like, I wanted to be in a touring metal band or a hardcore band, whichever one it landed on. That was what I wanted to do. Like, that was my like singular life goal.
Right.
And learn to produce and like record myself so I could do it for other bands too. But once I achieved that, it was kind of like, now what am I going to do? And then luckily I found producing for hip hop and like pop music and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it probably would start making beats more seriously, like when I was younger too.
Right. Start looking.
Just start earlier. That was basically the gist of it. Just start earlier.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, but you hit on a good point though. It's like, if you would have done things differently, would you have ended up in that spot? And that's something I always have to remind myself, because, I started this in 2015 and it's, the hub of my main thing is this podcast. And it's, sometimes I'm like, man, why did I waste all that time, like being a mechanic and like doing all this other stuff that I was doing? But I have to remember, like, I may not have ever, I wouldn't have discovered podcasts if I didn't have a long commute,
Mm-hmm.
and, I would never have fell in love with the medium the way I did if I hadn't, XYZ. So you have to always remember that, like, everything leads to the next thing. So you can't necessarily sit around and be like, oh, I wasted my time, because you very well could be in a completely different position. It's
true.
It's not a type of waste of time necessarily,
Sometimes too, when I've met a lot of people too, where the first band they've ever been in, like the first musical thing they've ever done kind of blows up, or like maybe they're just kind of along the ride with the band that blows up, and their first tour is a bust and they really kind of like hit it like right off the bat. But when that shows any sign of like fading, or they're no longer making as much money and stuff, they didn't have to suffer at all.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of time those people just dip out and go do something else and then regret it later and realize like, oh damn, that was actually kind of cool. I don't know what I was thinking. And I've met a lot of people like that. So I'm actually kind of glad that I had to grind a little bit, and I had to like suffer doing like DIY tours with my old band and stuff, like in a van, and really test how much I wanted to do music, because it just thickened my skin for like how much I'm willing to put up with, or how much I'm willing to go through in order to like keep this going. So that was actually a positive thing. Sometimes like suffering, you can come out of it stronger.
Right. And it does show you like how much you really want to do it, because sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not always, you're not always getting, phone calls from Juice. It's not how it works.
Yeah, no, it's not for sure. It's still not, and even when that happens, like even when you work on like a #1 album, you get like plaques and recognition and all that stuff, it's still not the tip of the iceberg. It's crazy. Like that happens. And then you're like, I still have to like keep going, because this is not like the end all be all. It's like addicting, it's like, damn, I got to do this again and again and again and again.
Well,
where
though you do have to keep doing it, because just because you did it once doesn't mean you're going to have success for the rest of your life.
No, not at all. If anything, there's more pressure put on you, because now it's like people are like, oh, I like, now you have people watching you,
yeah. There's a lot more scrutiny over everything. They're just paying attention to your every move.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's cool, like I like doing it. I love messing with gear, and I love messing with like the fact I just get to like make production and just play with plugins and stuff all day is worse jobs. There are much worse jobs out there.
Definitely. Which leads me directly into what my next question was going to be. Like, what does your day look like? Like an average day?
So I usually have like sessions booked out, sometimes with writers, sometimes with artists, sometimes with bands. And just kind of fill my calendar up with like, sometimes I'll be writing for a handful of artists, and, me and some of my songwriter friends, or a songwriter who like my manager or something like that will put me in a room with, we'll write for something specifically. Or I'll just make something from scratch. Luckily now that really, really glad that I did all those years of producing bands and stuff like, and because now that rock is back in the mainstream again, my skills like programming drums to make them sound real and, getting tracking guitar as well, just that sort of stuff, now really plays a hand in it. And then now the fact that it's that fused with production elements, luckily I kind of did both, so I can kind of throw both together, and I can just kind of make a track and then just shoot it out to a bunch of different people and just see where it lands. Mm-hmm. So I'll do that. Sometimes I will spend like a day or two where I just make like guitar riffs and keyboard ideas without drums or bass. Mm-hmm. And I'll send that to other producers to make their drums and bass on. A lot of times it'll be with like producers who I'm friends with and or who are working with artists who I want to work with, but I can't get to on my own because most artists have a little circle who they work with. And if you want to get into that circle, you got to go through someone in the circle. So either their engineer or their producer. And luckily everyone wants guitar stuff now. So, me coming from like Winds of Plague and stuff, I'm an okay guitar player, I'm not Tim from Polyphia, but he's my boy, shout out. But watching that dude play guitar will make you want to put the instrument down firsthand. Oh, just man. Even him just having a conversation with you, like noodling around, I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like what the hell am I? But anyways, like I can write a song, so I'll send the guitar riff out to other producers to make drums and stuff on. But a lot of times recently it's been just like sessions, I just do a lot of sessions. So it's cool too, because like I'm lucky, like where I can produce for a diverse amount of bands. So like recently, I started working with Story of the Year a little bit. Then another day I'll work with like a pop singer. The other day I'll work with a rapper. So it varies, which is what I like. I want to have like a Rick Rubin like kind of schedule where it's just genre fluid.
Yeah, I think that's how you keep it interesting, right?
Challenge yourself.
It's like, okay, like, after a while, if you spent like 40 years producing, metalcore bands, it's like you'd probably get to a point where you're like, I don't want to hear another breakdown ever again.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, totally. But it's fun too though, because when you do different stuff, you can apply some stuff to stuff carries over. Things I'll learn with doing heavier bands. Now I could be like, oh, I can sneak a breakdown into like a pop song, sometimes, and do that kind of stuff because I just want the world to be more metal and as a whole. Yeah. I want to live in like a metal apocalypse type of world, where it's just the biggest band in the world is just the most brutal band and everything's so I try and sneak that in as much as I can wherever I can.
I love that. So let's take a little bit of a segue into the more gear side of things, because supposedly that's what this podcast is. I'm told. I don't know if that's so your guitar. I imagine you have a fair amount of guitars at this point. Do you have the one?
Man, the one I don't know if the one always changes for me. I have one I've been using a lot is I have I play for ESP. Yeah. So I have the Sparrowhawk, Mastodon's SIG, and it has these really cool lace pickups in it that only like a handful of them were made with, because they changed the pickup developer for some business reason. But those lace pickups sound super sick, and it's actually a really diverse guitar. So I've been using it on like a lot of different stuff. Like it sounds great with clean stuff, sounds great with heavy stuff. So I've been using that a lot. The one guitar for me, it's crazy. It's funny because I have like ones I want for specific things. Like I want this guitar's clean. I want this guitar's, like more mid rock one. I want this guitar's like heavier side. But for the heavier, like lower stuff, I still really like my like Stephen Carpenter. Mm-hmm. That one just has like a really cool like twang to it that I use a lot for, at least for heavy rhythm stuff. Mm-hmm. For brighter stuff, I have a telly. I like my telly for, brighter, more chimey stuff. I have a really cool Takamine nylon string that I use a lot too, for more like even just for layering. Like if I play a clean lead or like a clean main melody part in a beat or a song or something, I like layering a lot with the nylon because it just adds like texture to it. So a lot of my stuff is kind of like one guitar. Like I don't really think usually achieves what I want. Usually a lot of my stuff I create through layering of multiple instruments, even with like with the Stefan, I honestly kind of have been layering a lot of, fake guitar under it, like the Odin or like the Hydra plugins that they actually sound great. If you blend and like sidechain like a Odin or a Hydra or something like that, just you have to MIDI map out the riff you're playing, and you have to edit the riff well enough to where they sound kind of like one thing, but you can really like, I don't know, there's just something about inhumanness over humanness I think sounds really cool, but that's just me.
Yeah, I've been playing with I've said this on the podcast a lot lately, but I am like definitely traditionally like Mr. Tube Amp man, like because I can be, I don't have to go out on the road or do anything. But lately I've been playing with a lot of the STL plugins. Just I'm like, I got to see what everybody's talking about, and I'm like, oh geez,
yeah, it sounds great.
You sound really good. So now I've been trying to make a habit of when I am recording, always having a DI so I can, as well as the mic'd up stuff, so I can
reamp it
later, just because find something cool in there that it's like, wow, I can just scroll through all these vintage orange and high watt models and like scroll and like I don't have all of those things. I don't have a 5150. Like, let's find out what it sounds like. So,
yeah, totally. And I have a Kemper. I use my Kemper a lot. I just have like a handful of homies who have like who've produced with and stuff, like Will Putney, and who've given me tones that they sound freaking awesome. So I use that a lot. I use Easy Mix's expansion packs a lot from TuneTrack. That has a lot of really good guitar tones on it. Like the Mishra pack or the Tosin pack sounds great, or like the Frederick pack from the Sugar. Lots of killer stuff in there. Yeah, honestly, because a lot of times I like doing that because if I want to reamp later, at least it's just a DI signal. So like if I'm down the road, if say I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get this mixed or whatever for real, like I have friends like my friend Jeff Dunn or stuff who like guitar tone is like their thing, and they're better at it than I am. So I'll outsource that kind of stuff sometimes, like if you want to get the best mix possible, a lot of times it's better just to know someone who's be honest with yourself about people who are better than you at a specific thing, and like lean on that sometimes, because the ultimate result is like the outcome. It doesn't matter how you got to the outcome. It's just what the outcome is that is what really matters.
Exactly. 100%. Does the final product what you're trying to achieve? That is what it's all about. So
yeah. Or are you just trying to stroke your ego and just say, I use my vintage, this amp is only made in Japan and blah, blah, blah.
Which, don't get me wrong, I definitely can fall victim to the number one criticism I get when I'm doing like pedal demos and stuff is like, you play is weird stuff, like weird amps and weird. I'm like, but that's what I have. I don't have anything normal. I just like weird things. So
that's cool though. Like if you make it sound good, that's what matters.
Yeah. I'm just like, if you can hear the clean tone first and you hear the affected tone after, I think you pretty much know what the pedal's doing.
Yeah. It just only time that becomes a problem is if you're making decisions you're just forcing yourself to use it, even if it doesn't sound right.
Right.
Just to say you used it.
Yeah, that's never the way to go.
Yeah.
So what about pedals? Do you like pedals?
Man, I did for a while, and honestly, enough tours. Like I play lead in winds, so I had to have this elaborate pedal board. And once I got a Kemper, I honestly just kind of was like, I still use like I have like the Zakk Wylde overdrive, like the MXR. I really like that overdrive pedal. I'll do that like into a DI sometimes if I'm just want a more like crunchy rock tone or whatever. And sometimes I do like some, some weird stuff like here and there, but for the most part, I'm more into plugins than I am pedals.
Okay. That makes sense with what you do.
Yeah, exactly. It's just instant, like it's just a little, I don't know, it's probably more convenient, but a lot of times when I'm creating, especially if I'm trying to get like weird stuff, a lot of it is like experimentation and just falling backwards into ideas. So I'll just like throw some ridiculous signal chain together that I no rhyme or reason until I make a sound that sounds cool to me.
Yeah.
So I don't really concern myself as much with, using necessarily having used pedals. But my favorite pedal though is definitely like the Digitech like whammy.
Dude, I just rediscovered my love for the whammy. The whammy was one of the first pedals I got in the collection, and I pulled it out of the drawer the other day, and I'm such a different player now.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what I'm going to do with this. Like, I'm not going to do the Jack White thing that I was trying to do with it. And
yeah,
I'd been watching, his name just totally failed. That was the worst thing I could do. I'll have to, I'm not going to remember. My brain broke. I've been watching somebody on Instagram who's really good with the whammy. Nick DePiro. That's who it is.
Oh, okay.
He does fantastic whammy riffs, and I was like, I want to try to do some of that. And I tried. It wasn't as cool as what he did, but it was definitely in that ballpark. And I was like, oh, okay, the whammy has returned to the front of the stage for me. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it's just I just like stuff where you can just kind of get weird and creative, and that thing is just like really cool for that. I did too. Recently come across this really cool pedal. I like the. Have you heard the Red Witch? It's a analog synth like processor pedal. It's a synthron, I think is how to say it. But it's really cool. It basically just takes your guitar signal and turns it into like a synth like kind of thing, and it does cool stuff with like arping it. And I was using that the other day with my friend, and I was very, very into that because just anything. I like stuff that makes your guitar not sound like a guitar anymore.
Yes, me too.
Like that's really cool to me.
You need to come to the Shred Shed because we've got a lot of that, or I have a lot of that. There's no one else here. I have a lot of stuff that turns your guitar not into a guitar anymore that you would have quite a lot of fun with.
Yeah, see, I'm super down for that. It's just not really like my total like expertise, Yeah. But there's lots of plugins, that if they were pedals, I would, definitely have. Like, I don't know if you've been messing with like RC20 or anything like that plugin wise lately. This is really cool. Everyone's probably just like, oh my God, it's so basic because now every producer is like into this right now, but it works great. It's it's called RC20. It's like retro color. It's basically just to make your, whatever you have going into it. But for guitars, I use it a lot for that kind of like lush, clean, like Pink Floyd-y kind of ambient tone. And I just haven't come across many things that if you use it right, that do it better. But it's cool. It's got like a wobble. It's got like a distortion, like a digital add, really good sounding reverb, and like a magnetic emulator. So it's supposed to emulate like tape. But I use the hell out of that. And it's by XLN Audio.
Okay.
It's a really cool one. I can go on for days about like, but I guess that's what this podcast is for, right? Go on for days about like
what you're
this
using
kind of stuff. Yeah. That I really, really like. Output has so much cool stuff, like plugin wise. I don't know if you've experienced much with Output, but like stuff like Movement. I don't know. Movement's a really cool plugin that basically anything you put through it, it just adds kind of like an ARP effect to it. It adds a lot of stuff to it. It's basically just a multi signal chain, like stereo processor where you can add like filters, delays, all kinds of stuff.
Gotcha.
But the stuff it does, like if you just have some regular melody that's just kind of bland and plain, if you put movement on it, and it just adds so much like life and like literally it's called movement. That's what it does. It adds like movement, like stereo imaging stuff. And that's like really cool
stuff. Or
yeah, it does it does some panning stuff. It does a lot of it is like tremolo stuff, just basically adds like a creative signal chain for you, and I've been using that a lot on guitars, and I have some cool stuff I've used it with, like me and Tim from Polyphia, like we made a bunch of stuff together, and we've used movement on a bunch of it, and just like his playing like through like some crazy ARP stuff like that, just it's just like otherworldly. So I've been into that. A good one, which is like a classic for me, which in terms of like for bass and for anything you want to like thicken up snares, it's really good. But especially for like 808s and like bass that's just not really like thick or isn't really, doesn't have that like bottom end that you want it to. I really like Sausage Fattener.
All right.
It's by Dada Life. And basically it's super simple. It's just like a 2-knob thing. One's called fatness, one's called color. And it does that perfectly. If you have an 808 or something that's just not hitting right, or a bass that's just not knocking right, you just put that on it and just turn it up a little. And, you have a bass that sounds legit now. Or a snare that's not cutting through. Anything you want to cut through a mix, really. Mm-hmm. But so, yeah, I'm not as into pedals, but I'm really into plugins, so it's the same thing, though. They're literally the same thing. It's literally the same thing. It's just a digital version of it.
It is. But there's so much you can do in the plugin world. I mean, there's a lot you can do in the pedal world, especially these days. But, you're harnessing a lot more processing power, even if you have a basic computer that you're using than in most guitar pedals,
Oh, absolutely. Where, dude, even if the most like expensive computer, you can max your RAM out, all that, and you're still gonna run into that.
Yep.
Spent so much money on my computer, so much money just getting it like as fast as I can with a laptop, and still, even then I'm just like, Jesus, there's just no fixing this. I've never came across anybody who's 100% satisfied with what with their processing power, honestly.
Yeah. Because everything's always, the software and the hardware are always, outrunning each other. The eternal struggle is never going to end. It's never.
Nope. It is. It's an internal struggle and an eternal struggle.
That's right. I have a pedal suggestion for you though, on that note, because it's probably my favorite pedal still.
Oh, cool.
The
write this down.
Yeah, the Hologram Electronics Microcosm. I talk about it so much, people probably think they sponsor the podcast, but they don't. I just super love that pedal. I made a whole song, actually.
Oh, my friend has this. Yeah,
dude, it's deep. It's deep. I made a whole song that was almost every track had that pedal on it, and I just ended up calling it Microcosm because it's awesome. It's such a good pedal.
I'm gonna buy this right now. Right after we get off this thing, I'm gonna buy this.
If it's available. It's been really hard to get, I think, but keep your eyes peeled. I know some people. Maybe we can make it happen.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, so if it's in demand like that, then yeah, I probably should get this, right?
Yeah, it's so insane. Like, I don't know. I'm perpetuating the problem by talking about it like this, but it can do ARP stuff. It can be. It's very, very complicated, and it can get insanely deep. But what's beautiful about it is most pedals that have this level of complication to them are just kind of hard to use until you play with them for a little bit. What's so great about this, you can just plug it in and just start messing around, and instantly you're going to have something cool come out of it, even if you don't really know what it's doing. It's so
cool.
Yeah.
And it has like a glitch section. Oh, it has like a loop section. Oh, cool. Yeah.
It's a looper. It's a reverb. I don't know what it is. It's a microcosm. It's
nice.
It's so awesome.
That's sick. Yeah.
You will love that pedal for sure. All right.
Dope. Yeah. I love, anything like, that does creative stuff like that. I'm into
that. Any of the Maris stuff. I don't know if you've seen their offerings. There's some X Line 6 people and X Strymon people, really cool people as well. I really like them. They've been on the show before. But the Maris Enzo is the literal synth that was kind of designed with guitarists in mind, but instead of
I've seen this.
Oh, you've seen that one? Okay.
This is similar to what that Red Witch pedal I was telling you is like.
I got to check that out because I know about Red Witch, but I don't know about that pedal. So I have to check that out.
Yeah, this is really cool too. Yeah, I need to get more. I need to go down the pedal rabbit hole a little more. You know, I definitely know I need to. But I've also been trying to because I've been coming across much more like analog synth stuff too, and I've been wanting to go down that rabbit hole too. Or it's starting to get like a problem. Like I gotta I gotta save some money to make smarter decisions than just buying gear all the time.
Well, that's the best thing you can do with your money, as far as I'm concerned.
True. Yeah, true.
Ground at his ridiculous place that he doesn't need.
I can just do a write-off with it,
That's right. It's for business. It's fine. It's totally
exactly. Technically, it is. It still feels weird to me to it feels guilty to me to say that kind of stuff. But it is literally.
It is for work. That's my wife even looks at me weird when stuff comes in the mail. I'm like, it's for work. She's like, yeah. I know it. I know it is. Sure it is. Yes, it is for work. It literally is. I just happen to like my work. Okay.
Mm-hmm. A really cool plugin too I've been using a lot is by Sugar Bites. It's called Looperator, and it's really cool. It I use it a lot on hi-hats and percussion stuff, but basically it is a 6-channel effects unit where you can add glitches to it. You can control the glitches. You can add if you want 4 skips, 2 skips. It has all kinds of weird filtering processes built in, envelopes. And basically, if you put it on percussion and stuff, it'll just do all sorts of it'll just add all sorts of cool glitches and all sorts of cool little filtering stuff that make your percussion, or you can put it on anything really, melodies, cool vocal effects. Sometimes I'll just automate it into vocals, but I've been mainly using it for percussion, but it makes your kind of straightforward, dull percussion much more interesting and lively. And it'll do stuff that would take you hours to if you were to try and match it on your own,
Right. That sounds
so. Yeah, Looperator. It's cool, and that company makes a lot of cool stuff too, because they make another one called Effects Tricks, which is also really cool like that, where basically you just draw in it looks like you're drawing in MIDI notes onto a what almost kind of looks like a drum map, basically almost looks like a MIDI track, but it just adds stutter filters, scratch loops, all kinds of cool little stuff you can glitch out your track with.
Nice.
So I like doing that sort of stuff, lots of little subtle production elements like that, where sometimes they're up front, sometimes they're not, but I find that's kind of what will separate your production from just having very flat, dull stuff, is trying to add little sprinkles here and there of creative sound design. So I'm not really the kind of, I have a lot of friends who are great at, just super minimalist production without much sound design and stuff. But I just think maybe because of Winds of Plague being a symphonic band, and us being very over the top with that production stuff, just kind of that's where my taste usually leads, is towards subtle little, toppings of creative, sound design in there.
Totally.
So like, I love like, with like influence from like Linkin Park and stuff like that, they're amazing at that kind of stuff. So that's just, I usually gravitate towards that kind of type of gears, things to make my stuff sound a little bit different and just a little bit more interesting, like that you might not catch just if you were just listening passively, but if you were to like pay attention to it, you would catch all the little like earworms and stuff like that,
Yeah, things that make you like, wait a minute, what was that?
Exactly. But where it's not too like upfront, where it totally like disrupts, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I love that. I mean, that is a little bit how I work. I like to put a lot of, in my weird cinematic like horror movie music that I make, I like to like put a lot of movement into things where it feels like the sound's traveling around your head, if you're listening to headphones.
Totally.
So I kind of understand what you're talking about. Like if you just listen to it like on a speaker or on a mono speaker on your phone or whatever, you're not going to catch all this stuff. And because actually some of it like literally doesn't translate. Maybe that's because I'm garbage at mixing, maybe. But but I like it to move a lot, especially when it's kind of a wall of sound. I like the different parts to come in and out. And so I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, totally. I like too where I find fun in like the challenge of taking something really like bland and basic. Like if I played like just some simple like 4-bar like note, so some 4-bar like 4-note riff or something like that, that's just clean DI channel or something, and just like throwing effects at it until it turns into this whole other sound and thing, and just kind of fall without really intent or like a rhyme or reason for it. Just kind of just do stuff that you think sounds cool until you land in a place that you're happy with, where you've taken something basic and made it into something like interesting.
Totally. I love that.
Yeah. So like I usually am lucky enough not to run into writer's block and stuff like that because of that, because like sound design creation and stuff like that can be just purely like indulgent and purely just like fun. Like it's almost like just playing around, where if I'm like, I'm not really writing something I like great on guitar, I'm like, whatever, I'll just take what I have and then go back to the drawing board and just throw effects and stuff on it until it sounds like something totally different.
Dude, that reminds me, it's September now. I have to hurry up. I've got a Halloween EP I'm trying to drop, and I forgot that I still have a bunch of stuff to do on it.
Oh man.
You just reminded me because you were like talking about, because it's mostly sound design. And I was like, oh man, I got stuck on that one thing and I haven't revisited. I'm like, oh no, Halloween's almost here.
Yeah. I got to write.
I got to hurry up.
It may not normally be up like your wheelhouse where you listen to, but I don't know. Did you hear the new Halsey album that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross produced?
I didn't. I heard about it, but I haven't heard it yet.
Man, Trent Reznor's like production, like in terms of that kind of stuff, like obvious, goes without saying clearly, but he just always still just blows my mind with that kind of stuff. Whenever he does anything that, especially like sound design wise, I'm always just like, it's one of those things. It's like watching Tim Henson play guitar like in front of you. It's like, Jesus, like I gotta freaking step it up.
Gotta bring my A game, man.
Yeah, dude.
Well,
totally.
We've reached the end of the podcast, and I still have a couple classic questions to get into with you before we wrap up the main part.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Before I do that, I like to give the guests a chance to plug whatever they want to plug, give a shout out to their grandma, or whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to say to a couple thousand people right now. Now's your chance to do it.
Yeah, just follow me on the social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that. Just at Morgothbeatz, beats with a Z at the end. I usually update with when I'm making production and stuff like that. And hi, Mom. Yeah, I got that. Yeah, just that. I just have a lot of stuff coming out around the pipeline. Some stuff, I wish I could just like gush about right now, but I can't. I'm not gonna jinx myself. But I have lots of cool stuff on the horizon coming out the rest of the year. So, yeah, stay tuned.
Right on. Sounds good. All right, here we go. Classic questions. First one. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
The noise suppressor.
Ah, yes. What is it? NS2?
Yeah, NS2.
Yeah. That is a good pedal. I forgot that it can do some things that it can do. And it is like,
it's essential.
Yeah. Especially when
it's basic, but it does what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And it's noticeable if you don't have it.
Yeah, very, especially for doing the stuff that you do. Like,
yeah,
it's very noticeable when the NS2 is not there.
Maybe if I was in a really noisy hardcore band, I would just kind of throw it out the window. But all the other times, no. Yeah, I like that pedal.
Good answer, the NS2. And some people have asked, does Boss sponsor this podcast? No, they don't. But I'm perfectly willing to keep answering this question, or asking this question for sponsorship. So, yeah. All right, cool. And the final question. This is the one that gets a little bit dicey. What is your favorite kind of pizza?
I really like buffalo chicken pizza.
Yeah. Haven't had that one in a while. Buffalo chicken. You like to
Actually, they used to have it at California Pizza Kitchen and they got rid of it off their menu. And now you can only buy it just to make it. But when they had it on their menu, that was my favorite pizza. And now it is no more at that restaurant. But I will always look back fondly on it.
Maybe somebody out there can recreate it for you.
There's other places that have buffalo chicken pizza too. That's fire. But yeah, buffalo chicken pizza for sure.
Say maybe we could get, one of the big pizza chains like to do the Morgoth meal, and it can be,
See, that's what I'm talking about. The Morgoth meal.
The Morgoth meal. The kids are going crazy for the buffalo chicken pizza.
They would probably have to pay Tolkien for that. I can't take claim for the Morgoth.
And that is what I want to get into on the Patreon / Apple subscriber. Now it's weird because I got the Apple thing too, but the premium content section of the podcast. So
let's go.
Dude, thank you so much. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, of course. Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, dude. All right, everybody. For Micheal, as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, folks. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And I want to encourage you to check out Micheal's stuff, check out Winds of Plague, check out anything he's been involved in. He's a really great dude, and, I really enjoyed his time, and I'm looking forward to getting to know him even better. I think we hit it off after this episode. It was one of those episodes, which are always extremely, extremely rewarding, and honestly, the best part about podcasting. So thank you for allowing me to be able to do this. Thank you for spending all this time with me on this episode. And if you want to hear more from Micheal and myself, you can subscribe via the Apple subscription, or you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/tonemob. And there are a few different levels there. But either way, for $5 a month, you're going to get extra episodes beamed to your ears every week. Extra bonus content, baby. And my undying love. So thank you so much for helping out. And please share this episode with a friend. Share any of these episodes with anybody you think might get something out of it. It all helps immensely. But I know you've got other things to do, so I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you so much. Talk to you very, very soon. Bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style. Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.